Hello and welcome to another Matura Express English stream. Today we're gonna talk about analyzing the situation and how to give a monologue. And I forgot to say that my name is Chris, but you all hopefully know about me by now. As I've already mentioned, today's stream is all about the monologue and how to analyze the situation. So you might ask, which situations should I analyze? Well, of course, it's the situation of the task. In this case, it's task 1, the monologue, where you basically have to adjust yourself and your knowledge, your vocab, your phrases to the different situations, since task 1 is all about doing some sort of a talk or presentation to an audience that you do not know until you've read the exam papers. What you know is that there are a few topics that are meant to be for the A levels, and therefore it's easy to practice. But I'm gonna show you the overview of today's, or basically the overview of the exam as a role play. Basically, the exam or the role play is just about being in different role, for example, as an expert, as a teacher, a person who works in this case at a PR agency, or every other job you can imagine that of course fits to the topic. Just imagine yourself in the role of an expert, basically, and try to find a way to best present normally the 3 bullet points that are listed task 1. Of course, very important, try to stay in that role during task 1, but also during task 2, that's the dialogue where you're asked questions from the examiners. You're still in that role of an expert, but you don't have to introduce yourself as the expert, since in this imaginary situation, everyone already knows that you're an expert in any field of expertise. What you have to consider when you start, so basically, if you don't know it, the oral exam is structured, or it starts off with an introduction, then task 1, the monologue, where you have 5 minutes to do your monologue. Then the monologue is followed by task 2, which is the dialogue, which is actually an interaction between the examiner and you, the examinee, and it's meant to be not only a answering of question, it's also meant to be that you as the examinee might ask questions to the examiner if you have questions that concern the topic in this discussion. Of course, the examiner is imagine him an really interested member of the audience, maybe, that asks questions and likes to be involved in a constructive discussion. Then this task 2 is then followed by the follow-up discussion, which is a really short discussion, which basically consists of questions from the examiner board. Normally 2 to 3 minutes, I guess. It's just a rather personal question, so you're not in a role anymore. And then you're done with the exam. So when you have introduced yourself, your person, not as an expert, and move on to task 1, read the paper carefully. I think I don't have to mention it, but I'm gonna mention it anyway, really carefully. There are normally 3 bullet points that you have to include in this presentation, in your monologue. And when you start off, at first introduce yourself to the audience and greet the audience. I forgot to write it down here. Greet the audience just with an easy phrase like "Dear ladies and gentlemen," and so on and so on. And then introduce yourself as the expert now. So I'm an expert in nutrition, or nutritionist, or something like this. Then you give a brief overview of your talk, which basically consists out of the topic you're gonna talk about and the 3 bullet points you're asked to include in your talk. Then just simply start with the talk. You can do it by either making a little joke or a interesting reference from statistics, or maybe something you experienced, personal experience or something. I think that really introduces the audience, in this case the examiner, to the topic, and lets the listener, in this case, have a better introduction to the topic. So then just mention all the things you know about those 3 bullet points, and maybe summarize the most important aspects. You don't have to do it. If there's enough time left, you can do it, but normally you're a bit nervous in the exam, so you might be rushing through all the bullet points, and then you think, Chris mentioned I could do a summary, so then just jump into the summary and summarize the most important aspects that you think are most important for the topic. Don't only summarize the bullet points. It doesn't make any sense, since it's already, you've mentioned it in the introduction and it's on the exam paper and everyone basically knows what you're talking about. So don't summarize the bullet points, but summarize the most important aspects. So I think that's makes a good impression on the examiner. Now we're coming to one of the most important topics, aside from the knowledge topic, I guess, your topics that you've learned, that if you studied intensively, and how to analyze the exam situation. So now you're in the exam, you have your preparation time. You read through the exam carefully, of course, and then you read task 1. You're an expert in CrossFit. No, maybe not. It's just nutrition, or you're a musician, or let's leave it with the nutrition. You're an expert in nutrition, and then you examine, of course, which role am I in? So that's very important. If you don't know it, it's rather difficult, I guess. So analyze in which role are you. Very easy, I think. Are you an expert in something? Are you a teacher in that teaches specific subjects? If you have found out in which role you are, then you move on to who is your audience. Is your audience consists your audience out of pupils, university students, teacher, parents, and then you adjust your vocab or your knowledge to the audience, basically. So you might mention different things when you talk to parents. So you might consider the side of the parents, not only the pupils. You might talk with the pupils about some of their interests, so maybe reference to school or university. I think it's also like easy to make a reference to the free time or university, or I don't know. It depends, of course, of the on the task on task one, basically. Then what are your objectives of your tasks? What does it say, actually, the task? Is it, for example, in this case, is it the role of sport in the Olympics in our society, or is it about losing weight in 10 days, or is it about how to fix a car tire? It's really easy to find it out. You just have to be able to read. Basically, in this case, it's about the role of sport in the Olympics in our society. So you know the main topic of the monologue, and keep it in mind. Since you have preparation time, you can easily work your way through it. So I think this is not as difficult. And then, of course, analyze in which type of situation are you. Is it a talk? Is it a presentation? Is it a seminar? Of course, you might do the same things, but yeah, different settings, basically, where you can adjust your vocab. But of course, talks, presentations, and seminars are really similar. So maybe stick with talk and presentations or seminar. I don't know about it, but be sure to just choose the right language, the right phrases. Keep in mind those are all formal talks, no formal language. Of course, that's still an exam. So be sure to keep that in mind. And now we're gonna shortly discuss the introduction, the monologue introduction and the structure. Basically, we talked about it already, but I'm gonna quickly revise it. Introduce yourself. So not your real name. Maybe I'm not Chris anymore, then I'm Simon. Or just the expert that works at an online marketing company or something. Then try to come up with a catchy phrase that somehow draws the audience's attention. To just like I mentioned before, I think it helps to lead into the topic more easily. At least sometimes it helps me. And then tell the audience what you're going to talk about. So just really basic things. And then, of course, start with the talk. Yeah. Useful phrases in this case could be or are good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, just a formal greeting. My name is, and I'm a blah blah blah, XY. I've been asked by the school's principal to hold a talk or a presentation about topic XY. Or you could also have been asked by the mayor of a city or a village. You're gonna read it from task 1, actually, from the instructions. And then, of course, today I'm gonna talk about, I'm sorry. Don't use gonna talk about, just keep formal. Today I'm going to talk about something that is written out on your exam paper. Catchy phrase example, for example. Nowadays, obesity has become one of the most frequent causes for cancer or other diseases. So a very heavy statement at the beginning that probably draws the attention from the audience to your talk, to your presentation. Since you've made this statement, and then you just lead into the topic, mention what you going to, which aspects you're going to treat. Yeah. And now, since we have different situations, we're gonna quickly talk about how to adapt the monologue for different situations. So at first, I want to mention that you have to make sure that you read the instructions carefully. So task 1, of course, but you should read all instructions, of course, carefully. Very easy thing that really helps you to adapt to the situation. Then analyze what is your field of expertise as the expert. So is it nutrition? Is it PR? Is it marketing? Is it sports? Is it recreation? Well, we don't know yet. Make sure to find it out. And then adapt your vocabulary according to your role. Which means, on the one hand, which I've already talked about, your audience, but I think it's very difficult for you in the exam situation. But more important is that you, of course, adapt your vocabulary and your phrases and your knowledge to the topic, of course. If you use vocabulary that is used for marketing with nutrition, it doesn't work. So make sure to use the right vocabulary, the right phrases you have practiced over and over again to just be confident enough to do a good monologue, basically. And then also make sure that you know your audience. We've already talked about it. It's, I think, a little bit difficult, but somehow you might adjust the examples you mention in your talk, or just maybe your own experience as a student, or maybe if you're a parent, bring in your own experience. Yeah. But make sure that you don't forget about the time. There are only 4 minutes where you have to prove that you're able to do a good and a good monologue. So with the appropriate things we just talked about. So now we're gonna do a demonstration of different monologue introductions. I think there are 3 that I've prepared for, or I took it out of other exams basically that I've created. We're gonna leave out the introduction. So this introduction is not the introduction for task 1, it's the general introduction for oral exams. In this case, task 1 is about the modern family. Speaking monologue is 4 minutes now. Oh, okay, doesn't work. And the situation in this case is you work as a family counselor. You have been asked to hold a seminar for families on modern family life. So if we now analyze the first instructions or the first information we've got from task 1, who are you? You are a family counselor. And what is your objective, or what is your objectives? In this case, it's to hold a talk on modern family life. Who is your audience? Families in this case, and the type of, how did I actually name it? Yeah, which type and situation are we in? In this case, we are in a seminar, or you are in front of a seminar. But as I've mentioned, it might not be that important that you're in a seminar or doing a talk in front of people, since you're the person who talks anyway in front of someone or some bigger audience. So now your task is to include those 3 bullet points: the different types of family, how families have changed over the past decades, and reasons for these changes. Simply as that. And then you just have to do a sufficient preparation for task 1. This task, for this example, it's about the positive impacts of mass media. So in this case, you're the head teacher from the media department at London Secondary College. So you're an important person in this case. In this case, you're in the situation of a seminar again. Your objectives are to hold a talk on mass media in your modern world. And of course, the 3 bullet points are also objectives. And what did I leave out? The seminar and the audience are interested persons. Yeah. In this case, include definition of mass media, the different forms of mass media, and the positive impacts of mass media. I think that's really manageable to do this monologue in a proper way. Not really difficult. So now move on to the last example. task 1 again. In this case, the role of the Olympic Games. Who are you in this role or in this task 1? You are a guy or girl who works at the PR department of your city council. And you're doing an evening for the public in this case. So for interested people who want to know about the Olympics and the role of sport and Olympics in our society, which is of course the objectives. And what did I forget? The audience. In this case, those are residents from your city, and you should include the Olympic Games message, how the Olympics can inspire to become more active, and the importance of doing sport and being active. So if you've worked through the topics, the monologue, and of course the dialogue, but it's a bit more difficult, the dialogue, I'd say. It's really easy, I'd say. But of course, some are not blessed with super duper English skills, but you can do a lot with revising every day or every second day. Thinking about the topics or thinking about how you could do a monologue on a specific topic. And then you're good to go with the exam, I think. Do we have any questions for today so far? No questions? Okay. If you have questions, of course, write us in the comment section of this video below, and we're gonna come back to them as soon as possible. So far, I don't have anything to add to this today's stream, but of course, if you have something to add, just write us, and we're gonna come back to it as soon as possible. So that's all for today. I wish you a very pleasant evening, and I think you're gonna see Maria on Wednesday. Goodbye.